I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
All right, our good buddy Charles Payne he did call in, but it was too late for the segment, but he is going to join us on Friday morning at 6:35 a.m. That'll be good. Are you friends with Charles?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know what I like about Charles? Well, I like a lot about him, but he sends his brother money. His brother's in jail, and he sends him money every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy he is. He's a very, very giving, kind human being. I really like Charles quite a bit.
And he said, I'm going to ask him about it too on Friday, but he said, I love my brother. Yeah. He made mistakes, but he's in there. He's only making so much money doing, odd jobs. You make 20 cents an hour. So he said, I'm just going to help him out. And
that's awesome.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, our friend who has, his name's Abe Froman Jr.
Froman, the sausage king of Chicago.
The sausage king of Chicago. Abe Froman.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Because you have an alias, so that's your alias, right?
It is.
How did you choose Abe Froman Jr.?
Well, it's like any other idea. It just comes to you, and it makes sense. So, Abe Froman,
your dad was in the sausage business, right?
Yeah, and I didn't want to take over the sausage business. So, since I was getting into Bitcoin, I decided that I'd be Abe Froman Jr., the Bitcoin king of Chicago.
Something funny to people, though. So I know the Twitter account, Abe Froman. I've interacted with him, but I didn't know who it was because it's an anonymous account until he walked in the studio.
So that's your X account too?
Yeah.
Abe Froman Jr.
Right.
Abe _ Froman _
Well, we went to grade school together. He comes to my restaurant. So you're not anonymous with me anymore, but I'll keep your secret. So
right.
Yeah. So you got into Bitcoin before I even knew what Bitcoin was because we had you here years ago in the studio.
Right after Rauner got inaugurated.
Oh my gosh, that was you. All right, so how much was Bitcoin back then?
Well, it was hovering in the 700 range.
And what is it at today? Now there's different.
105,000, I would say.
No, it's up. The last 24 hours has been good to Bitcoin. 107,500 right now.
For one Bitcoin?
107.5.
Yeah.
So there's not an actual coin.
No, this is all just software that runs on nodes that are located all over the planet. So it's completely decentralized, which means that nobody can get to it in terms of attacking it. Everybody's got the exact same copy of the ledger. So whenever transactions happen, it gets copied in 70,000 places across the planet.
In 70,000?
Yes. 70,000 different nodes are recording the transactions and keeping the ledger. So, and the nodes aren't publicly known, like their locations. So they're sitting in people's basements and offices. So you said, but it's nothing. That was your implication a second ago, right? Well, of course it's nothing, but anything that trades just on an agreement that it has value. So the thing that's pertinent about it is that countries, institutions are broadening their footprint in the space. And once it becomes entrenched, like gold has very little intrinsic value. It's not used in production. It is for some, but I mean, that's probably this much of its value. Everything else is just what we agree on has value, and we are in the process of all agreeing that Bitcoin has value. Correct. Correct. And the future of Bitcoin has been apparent for a while, but it's just slow moving in terms of the first world financial groups and.
But do you consider it a vote of mistrust in stewardship of fiat currencies around the globe, particularly in our country?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, right? That's why I own it.
Yeah.
Those morons, what they're doing to our currency is criminal.
Yeah. And the more you realize that, the more you hate fiat currency.
Right.
It's addictive in a way.
I remember last time you were here, you and I were walking out, and there was a woman who wanted to sell the Bitcoin because she wanted to pay for her daughter's wedding, and you're just hell-bent. I'm going to talk her out of it. Did you talk her out of it?
No, it was actually another family member who wanted to sell to lease a new car.
Okay.
And I'm just like, please don't. And he did.
He did?
He did.
Okay.
And he regrets it.
Well, what would it have been at today? Do you know? Any idea?
Probably 3x when he sold it to lease a car.
Wow.
And I've never sold any. I've been buying it weekly for 8 years, and I don't. But the culture within Bitcoin, they're mistrusters of government, which I like, and they don't want to pay taxes. So I think the people who are reluctant to sell to take capital gains it's a way more powerful emotion in that asset than in any other asset. Fair?
Fair, very fair. In fact, that's actually part of the the innovations that are happening. I should say not innovations, but the new products where people are now realizing that Bitcoin isn't necessarily has to just be considered currency or money. It's collateral. So it's no different than your home equity. The home equity line of credit that you have is borrowing against the credit or the equity inside your house. So there's new products that are going to come out where you're going to be able to borrow against your Bitcoin, which is not a taxable event. You can then use that money and then pay back the loan like you would your home equity line of credit.
Do you notice on tax returns, I ask you if you own any crypto? I've never once answered that question. It's none of their damn business.
Well,
it's not. I've never had a taxable event.
Okay.
So I mean, the IRS is there to collect my taxes that I owe.
Right.
I've never had any taxable event at all. Why the hell do they want to know if I own crypto?
Well, because they're wondering if you're dumb enough to admit it.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to be put on the radar, because once you're on the radar, you're never off the radar.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
But,
yeah.
The taxable event that's what's going to be cool about this, is that you're going to be able to put up your Bitcoin to buy your house, to put your down payment on it, and then you can choose.
What's the time frame on that, though?
Well, it's actually happening now, but the rates are ridiculous, because really the loans that are being cut are for people that are posting their Bitcoin as collateral to get cash to go out and buy more Bitcoin.
Okay.
So it's really for degen gamblers right now. But eventually it's going to come up where you can go ahead and fully collateralize a home purchase, say $500,000 with Bitcoin, and then you'll get the $500,000 in cash, pay it off, and then you can decide whether or not this month I'm going to pay off the loan, or this month I'll let them.
But isn't that? Don't you have to pay taxes on that $500,000?
No, you're just borrowing. You're getting a loan against your collateral, so you're not selling it. So it's not a taxable event. But if you can then pay back your mortgage every month in either dollars, or you release some of your Bitcoin.
Yeah, but then you have to pay tax on that. Oh, yes,
well, yeah, that
right.
becomes a taxable event. But that's the cool part about it, is that it gives you the flexibility on whether or not you pay back your loan. Because every time you pay back your loan, you're then clawing back that Bitcoin. As that Bitcoin's going from 100,000 to 200,000, you are now incentivized to use as much cash as you can to pay off your loan, so that you take back that escrow.
So we had Lynn Alden on our show, The Future's Edge, yesterday, and she wrote the book,
the Future's Edge podcast
and the
Jim Uriel.
and the Unfiltered Investor newsletter. But anyway, that's the little shameless plug.
No. Plug away.
Plug away. I plugged brands already. But Lynn, here's one thing I really liked, and I want to see what you are in the camp. Lynn said, if this technology wins out, whereas Michael Saylor says, when this technology wins out. These are different words, obviously. And Michael Saylor, I think, is a little bit radical in my mind. I go more toward Lynn. Where are you?
I'm way more in the Saylor camp.
So it's when it takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not only just when, but how. So again, getting back to the whole collateralized debt, to be able to give you the sovereignty to be able to decide how you want to take on debt. Because if you think about it, if you brought in $500,000 of Bitcoin, collateralize that in a home mortgage, your interest rate should be below prime, because there's no risk to the bank. They don't have to.
Well, there's the risk at the bottom falls out of Bitcoin.
Well, there's that, but then but then there's triggers for you to go ahead and recapitalize your equity.
Yeah, okay.
Without taking that hit.
Makes sense.
So, but that's the nice thing about it, is because the banks have essentially zero risk. Like if you foreclose on your house, you stop paying your mortgage, they got to get you legally kicked out of your house. They got to sell your house. They got to pay the commissions, the damage you put to the house. That's a big risk to a home lender. They're going to look at somebody walking in with Bitcoin as being, oh my gosh, here's a zero risk borrow.
Okay.
Got a text message. Bitcoin is valueless and has no future. It relies on big investors to make it happen, and the payoff is getting poor. It will collapse overnight when it does.
I will just ask that person, what would they say about gold? What would they say about the Honus Wagner baseball card? What would they say about Beanie Babies? Anything that's above whatever level makes sense from a fundamental analysis is just trading on, to call it the greater fool theory, meaning will someone pay more than you, I don't think is appropriate in here, but it's kind of a cousin of what I'm talking about. If we decide it has value, it has value.
True, but I mean, it also comes down to the fact that the engineering of Bitcoin itself. In the early days, everybody's like, "Oh, tulip ball bubble," and all this kind of stuff, and it was so cringe to me, because tulips you can counterfeit and you can replicate, and you can be in your basement making more tulips.
Yep.
You can't do that with Bitcoin.
Right.
And that's once people understand that the technology cannot be corrupted through counterfeit or through replication or through supply growth. And it's not controlled by any government, and it can't be. So that was a big thing that Dan told me years ago. He's like, well, there's going to be people who are going to pass laws. I'm like, pass all the laws you want. Like, I'd like to make a law where it doesn't rain on the 4th of July. And people would probably elect me. But can I control the weather? No.
We have to be violent.
Yes.
Or threaten violence, or start cursing.
Violence isn't the answer. Sometimes it's the question, and the answer is yes.
Can it get hacked? I recently heard. I'm sorry that
Exchanges can.
So
that a company or that a country lost millions of dollars in Bitcoin.
Every bad story you've heard about Bitcoin being lost and or stolen and or hacked is a incorrect use of the term hacked. Every bad story you've heard has always been centered around human failure around security, human failure around scams, all the bad thing you can always trace to a human being. So when you realize the sovereignty of the technology, then you start treating it as such. So you get away from third-party custodians and saying, oh, well, this guy down the street said he's going to give me 10% of my Bitcoin. I'm going to give him my Bitcoin. He's going to give it back to me. Yeah, good luck. And to your texter who just sent that text, that's what I would call just copium. This is somebody who's either felt like they missed the train, missed the boat, and they want it to fail.
So they're jealous.
It has to fail, for them to feel good.
Now, do you still, when corporations are hacked and their computer systems are compromised, do you still negotiate with Bitcoin? Are you still doing that?
Yes, I mean within the industry, yeah, that still happens.
Okay. Oh, am I? This is.
Well, no, I mean with the insurance, yeah, that's something. No, I mean we can absolutely. I mean in the insurance industry, the cyber insurance industry. I mean they still have to do it. If you're a business and you're locked up with cybercrime, you've got a couple choices, and if your backups aren't good enough, you're going to have to start talking to the bad guys. And the bad guys are going to, they might be nice and they might be accommodating, and they might not.
So that's still happening every day. Someone's getting hacked. Some corporation.
Yeah, the ransomware cyber world has changed very drastically since the Russian-Ukraine war. That
for the better or for the worse?
For the different.
Oh, different how?
Well, before the war, the Russians were the ones that wrote the code, and the Ukrainians were the ones that actually used the code to launch the attack. So it's no different than any other criminal organization where you got the people who want to stay at arm's length away. They write the code. They give it to the gang members. Mm-hmm. They go out and they execute the attack. They collect the ransoms. They cut off some of it to the software guys. The software guys cut it into the chief of police, the mayor, Putin himself, all that kind of stuff. So that's why law enforcement is incapable of really being effective in this space, is because there's no cyber extradition treaties with those countries.
So first, two things real quick. The first one is a statement. And when I got into it, when I accelerated my buying of it, when BlackRock and Fidelity and VanEck all of a sudden announced that they were increasing their footprints in the space. I mean, whether we all know it or not, most of us, we work for BlackRock. BlackRock is probably and the United States government are the two most powerful institutions on the planet. That being said, secondly, I still have all my Bitcoin on Coinbase. Is that foolish? Should I be bringing it into a cold wallet?
Yes. Foolish, yes, to a lesser degree. I would put everything into cold storage, one, because you should learn how to do it, and you should get comfortable doing it.
Okay, that's the best argument I've heard.
Yes,
like yeah.
Once you learn about it and comfortable about it, then you're going to be like, oh, shoot, I should be doing this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, not only that, but you're talking about taxable events. Every year you leave it on Coinbase, they're kicking that information to the IRS.
Of course, right. And then the IRS knows that I have it.
Yeah, then you're on the radar.
Which again, by the way, I'm not trying to stir taxes.
I'm saying that.
But I'm trying to not give them a window into everything I'm doing.
Yeah, when Coinbase started off, they had a professional exchange. They called it GDAX. Now they call it Coinbase Pro. And they had 0% trading fees for a number of years just to be able to generate volume.
Okay.
But once they started charging fees, then they just started kicking the information out to the IRS. I was long gone off of Coinbase at that time.
Yeah.
But it's like that gives you the flexibility of doing what you want.
Sure.
Go to Puerto Rico, establish yourself down there where there isn't any income tax, or 5% if you're a U.S. citizen.
Or the Bahamas.
Or all of these other jurisdictions or all around the planet that are competing for people with Bitcoin wealth. El Salvador, Romania, Estonia.
Really? Text message, gold and baseball cards have intrinsic value.
No.
How much value does a number have without a ledger.
I don't agree. I think the Honus-Wagner baseball card, we agree. It's literally, okay, so you want to talk about the intrinsic value? It's like, what,
Yes.
half a cent of paper? So that's the intrinsic value, and it trades at $3 million. So yes, you're right. It has some level of intrinsic value. That's 1/2 a cent out of the $2.5 million price tag of it. So essentially, we're talking about the same things. And this is just an agreement that something is worth money. And that's the same thing with a Van Gogh, a Picasso, whatever. We just decide that it has value. Now, gold, we've decided for 10,000 years. And again, I don't know if it's 10,000 years, but he's on a roll. Let him go. But anyway, so we don't know what the actual, the intrinsic value of gold is nothing. It's just the agreement that it has value.
Well,
same stuff.
Absolutely. But here's another way to think about it. The Honus-Wagner card has a ton of value in the United States. Does it, if you walk the streets of India and try to sell the Honus-Wagner card, would it have any value?
Another great point.
I mean,
That's a good point.
Bitcoin, no matter where you go, no matter what language you speak, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're communist or capitalist, it doesn't matter because Bitcoin doesn't care.
Right. But diamonds, diamonds and gold are more universally accepted.
Yeah, but diamonds you can make in a lab now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
good
no,
point.
that's true.
That's a great point, right?
Everyone's getting those fake, the fake diamonds.
It's amazing that they're making that, and it's a good enough quality, but they're still charging near diamond rates. I would think that would be
About
No,
a third or a quarter.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, no,
And I missed it,
I've
yeah.
got nephews, and they've been
yeah.
recently engaged, and they got the lab diamonds.
Yeah,
Nice.
So
Me
it looks
too.
like it's a 3 carat, but they paid half of what a 3 carat is.
Yeah, and I wouldn't wear that in downtown Chicago.
Oh,
They'll kill for it just the same.
all right. Any more questions for our Abe
Froman Jr.
Froman Jr.?
No,
Oh, by the way, how much did that Ferris Bueller's vest go for?
275, you said, right?
That's what it's. Yeah, that's what it.
275 grand, which I actually think is very, very low amount. I would expect it a couple million. It's a great vest.
Well, do you think the person's going to wear it?
I'm going to take my
put it in the
Bitcoin
shadow
and
box.
buy the vest from the guy.
Right.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we
No, let's go
have
to the.
you go on your way?
Let's go to the commercial, the profit making break.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer. Gain insight into building strong marriages and raising godly children with Focus on the Family with Jim Daly each weekday at 11:30 a.m. on our sister station, AM 1160. Hope for your life.
Welcome back to Ask Hasselus.
How do you get pee out of an old mattress?
By trading in that old mattress for a new Beauty Rest or Sealy Posturepedic.
But that'll cost a lot of money.
Not at Hasselus Mattress. Through Monday, trade in your old mattress and get additional savings of $248 off a queen and $348 off a king. Plus, next day delivery and haul away of the old mattress for P.
What was that?
Sorry, I meant for free.
Sure.